What's up, guys? Today I want to talk about the most underrated camera that's currently out in 2025. Well, it came out at the end of 2024, but I'm talking about the Fuji XM5. And about 4 months ago, I got the XM5 in to do a shoot with. I was going to do my typical review I normally do, but I had a client music video job come in, and I was thinking in my head, what if I rock the XM5? Because it pretty much has everything that I'd want in a cinema camera once you rig it out. And before you get mad at me and go, Lee, that's not a cinema camera. How dare you say that? This is a cheap, compact creator camera. Well, I kind of turned it into a full-blown cinema rig after I put it in a cage and everything. And the footage turned out amazing. And by the end of this video, you're gonna see how this small, budget-friendly camera that shoots 6K open gate held its own on a shoot, and why I actually think it might be the biggest sleeper camera of 2025. So let's talk about how I rigged this out. This camera was made to be thrown in a purse, a fanny pack, your back pocket with a pancake lens and go on some trip somewhere. This isn't really the camera that you picture throwing anamorphic lenses on it to shoot a music video, but I went full cinema rig on this thing. I built it out with a cage from Small Rig. I don't know why their cage for this camera is like a steampunk style cage, but it's all I could find. Then I used the Fuji XH2S fan attachment, which is awesome. It's good that Fuji has the mounting holes for that fan because this is the only way I could trust this camera, knowing that it wasn't going to overheat using it all day long. And so I used a Small Rig base plate that you can attach V-mount batteries to. I put a NATO rail on that, a top handle. All the parts will be linked in the description. And then I used a cheap X-mount to PL mount adapter because I went anamorphic on the shoot. I was using the Blazar Remus 1.5x anamorphic lenses, and I powered the whole camera and everything through V-mount. And then I attached my Atomos Ninja 5 to the top as a monitor because it has HDMI in and out, so that I was able to attach a wireless transmitter. So I was using an Asun transmitter so the guys could get a feed on the iPad when they weren't on set. And honestly, it ran all day without any hiccups on that one V-mount battery, no overheating, no weird quirks, and honestly, it was super reliable. And the annoying thing about this thing though is that the ports are all on the hand side. So the side that you'd hold the camera from is where the HDMI and the USB ports are. So I think I could have benefited from having a side handle, which I didn't put on this. Oh, and the best part about this camera for shooting anamorphic is that it does do 3.2 open gate. So the full sensor, you're not losing anything once you de-squeeze it, you're getting the full image. Anyway, let's break down what makes this camera so special and what's under the hood. So one of the first things you're gonna notice about this camera is that it has no EVF. So the XM5 has no EVF, just a flip out touchscreen. And that could be a drawback to some people, but it's a huge plus if you want to keep the camera nice and compact. And from what I can remember, I think it's actually smaller than like a Fuji X106. So this camera is rocking a 26 megapixel X-Trans4 sensor, and although this camera is also great for stills, I did take a couple promo images for the band. But if you want more photo focus review of this camera, I'd say look at something like my XS20 review because it's the same specs, same sensor, same processor. And this sensor has great color depth, nice dynamic range, Fuji's unique color science, and really well controlled rolling shutter. It's also rocking the newest X Processor 5, and with that comes all the AI autofocus and speed you get from the modern Fuji cameras. Now here's where things get a little bit more interesting because the XM5 can shoot in both F-Log and F-Log 2, and for this project I just shot F-Log 1, but shooting F-Log 2 will squeeze a little bit more dynamic range out of it. It's a little bit more flatter, but you will notice a little bit more noise in the shadows. That's the only downside. As I mentioned, it can shoot 6.2 open gate. That's the full sensor readout up to 30 frames per second, and that's a big deal, especially when you're working with anamorphic lenses, or if you just want the extra headroom for cropping and post. If you want to do vertical or horizontal, you can reframe, which is nice. It can also do up to 4K 60p, and this is all 10-bit 422. And while I shot everything internally to the SD card, this camera is actually capable of outputting 12-bit ProRes RAW or Blackmagic RAW through the HDMI if you have a recorder for it. And that's not something you find on most cameras in this price range. This camera is $799. It's so cheap. And that makes it a legit contender for filmmakers looking for a budget-friendly camera with pro-level features, especially once you rig it out. And I'm talking about competition like the Sony FX30, which is the closest thing to it, which is double the price and doesn't even have open gate. Another spec that might matter to a lot of people, either negative or positive, is that the camera doesn't have IBIS. And I know that might sound like a step back to hear me say that, but I actually think that IBIS is not great for video in certain situations, especially for cinema stuff. You're gonna get that kind of unnatural robotic look sometimes, and I'd prefer to just have no IBIS. Now I know people that are vlogging or doing handheld video, IBIS does matter, and that's where I'd say look at something like the XS20 if you want to spend the extra money. But most of the time when we're out rigging cinema cameras, we're going to be using gimbals, steady cams, plus we're putting a lot of weight on the camera when you get a cage and V-mount battery and follow focus and stuff like that. And that's where it actually helps reduce a lot of that motion. So the video I was shooting is for a band called Teeth. They're a hardcore metal band, and this is the third video I've shot for them now, and it's super chaotic. It's aggressive. The vibe of this video was supposed to match that. So this thing has a lot of intensity, and it's exactly what I leaned into visually. I wanted the footage to look super moody, gritty, raw, all handheld. And in post, I was adding grain, dirt overlays, film scratches, and a bunch of animated blur motion effects. And to pull all that off, I turned to Motion Array, which is the sponsor of today's video. And if you don't know, Motion Array is the place to get royalty-free music, video assets, and stock footage. They have a massive library of video overlays and plugins as well. And I used a bunch of their assets in the edit of this music video, everything from film grain, glitch effects, and a bunch of different overlays. I even snuck in a couple of stock footage clips because it kind of helped build out the edit. So if you're a filmmaker, content creator, or editor, Motion Array is definitely worth checking out because of all the awesome stuff that they have. And they recently added a whole section of high quality LUTs made by professional colorists. And when I say section, I mean massive selection of LUTs that kind of suit any look you're going for. I've used Motion Array in the past on a ton of different client projects because it's just a one-stop shop for all video assets. It made perfect sense for me to tap into their library for this music video. And if you want to learn more, make sure to check out motionarray.com and use my link in the description. And this is totally what the band wanted, so I wanted to lean into that. And I was even doing some lens whacking, so I was having some in-camera effects doing that. If you don't know what that is, basically you're unseating the lens from the mount and you're moving it off the body, which introduces a bunch of like weird artifacts and some warpy blurring things and some light leaks. But you also have to focus at the same time, so it's kind of tricky. But when you time it up with the movements and the beat of the song, it actually looks really awesome. Out in the field, the XM5 was rock solid. We're running it all day long. I didn't turn it off once. We were doing like 10-minute takes at a time sometimes. There was little airflow in there. We had a haze machine running, and I had no overheating, no weird bugs. The fan definitely did its job, and I powered everything off the V-mount battery over USB-C, so I didn't have to swap any batteries mid-shoot. Ran the whole day. And I know, though, if you did not have that fan attachment on there, this camera would definitely overheat, especially if you're shooting 6.2 open gate, because this camera gets hot and that body is so small. And when I got the footage into DaVinci Resolve, I was really happy with what I saw. As I said, I shot F-Log, not F-Log 2. So I stayed at the base ISO of 800 in F-Log 1. And so the footage was dang clean. It looks so good. Now, obviously, I was shooting into windows, so there's some blown out highlights. We had snow piled up behind it. This is back in the wintertime. I just leaned into the blown out highlights for this video. Obviously, I could pull those highlights down a little bit. Now, one thing this camera doesn't have is any de-squeeze options in camera. So I was using 1.5x lenses, and I had to de-squeeze them in my monitor so that I could actually preview the image properly. If you've ever had to shoot anamorphic and you weren't able to de-squeeze it on the back of your monitor, you know how hard it is to focus, because I was doing all manual focus. And the dynamic range held up great, especially in the shadows where they were packed with detail still. When I was pulling the shadows up, the skin tone was good. I did have to do some power windows to lift some shadows on the face a few times, but the footage held up great. It didn't fall apart, especially like you think it would on a camera like this. Oh, by the way, I filmed myself editing the entire video as well as screen capture everything for like 3 days straight, just in case anyone would be interested in seeing a video breakdown on how to edit a music video from start to finish, because there is a lot of work involved in editing a music video. So let me know in the comments if it's something you'd be interested in. Anyway, let's wrap this up. The XM5 is not a flagship camera, doesn't have IBIS, doesn't have an EVF. It has a film simulation dial on top, so clearly it's not marketed towards filmmakers. But when you build this thing out, you put it in a cage, put a fan on it, it's actually surprisingly capable, and it could be like a little mini cinema camera. 6.2 open gate sensor readout, 10-bit 422, F-Log, F-Log 2, 12-bit Blackmagic RAW through the HDMI. I think it has one of Fuji's best sensors, which I actually prefer over the newer 40 megapixel X-Trans 5 sensor, especially for video, because that newer sensor has a slower readout and a lot more rolling shutter. But this is a compact body that you can use for photo and video, all for under 800 bucks. Now, when saying this, you're going to need the fan attachment because you don't want to deal with overheating since this camera's body is so small. And obviously, you're going to need a cage, and then you're going to need a monitor, and then you're going to need handles and NATO rails and V-mount batteries to build this thing out. But keep in mind, this camera starts at under 800 bucks. It's not in the thousands of dollars. So if you're going to rig it out, it's still going to be pretty cheap. If you're looking for a little creative modular rig that you can build out for music videos, shorts, YouTube, photography. I think it's Fuji's most underrated camera in their lineup out of all the cameras they have right now, especially in 2025. Anyway, that's it. I'll have links to all the gear I used in the description. Big thanks to Fuji for loaning the camera for a couple weeks. Again, if you want me to do a breakdown in the editing process, let me know. I'll make a video. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you dislike this video, give it a thumbs down twice. Don't forget to hit that notification bell. I'll see you guys in the next one.